Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this podcast session once again with Sheri DeMaris, a very special guest. And I guess she's one of those people who's been into the natural food industry way before natural food actually became a rage all across the world. So thank you so much, Sheri, for being there. And it's quite an honor to be, talking to you
Thank
today.
you for having me.
Thank you so much. All my pleasure. So, Sheri, I'll first introduce you and then we'll start off with the session. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so Sheri DeMaris is a pioneer in alternate health. She's a natural foods chef educator for last 3 decades and has taught people and organizations across the world the importance of cooking and eating well. Sheri is a producer, creator, and narrator of a film documentary, The Spirit of Rice. Sheri is also the host of TV show on macrobiotic cooking and an author of an internationally sold cookbook, Macro Magic for Kids and Parents. So, Sheri, over to you if you would want to actually, introduce yourself or if I missed out something on your introduction before I start my questions.
Thank you so much. Thank you for hosting me and welcome everybody. And I'm so glad you're joining this podcast. Yes, my passion since I've been 25 years old has been natural foods and farming. And I had the great opportunity this year to create a film documentary on how to grow and cook brown rice and why it's so used so prevalently around the world and why it's so healing for the body. So I'm going to explain a little bit about our film documentary during the course of this podcast, but I'm also going to share with you some easy tips for cooking brown rice and eating it and why it's so beneficial and healthy for your body. And also a little bit about the programs I'm running here in the United States.
Thank you so much, Sherry. I think the biggest takeaway from this session is going to be how to cook brown rice because this is one complaint that I get from a lot of my clients. Like, I don't like brown rice because it's,
Mm.
it seems like chewy and nutty and it's not flavorful. So I think we can have that takeaway where actually we can know, how to cook it well. So, but before that, Sherry, just tell us, like, food industry in last few decades has actually seen a lot of ups and downs, moving towards nutrition, moving towards getting deeper into all those chemical components that the foods have. There's another in macrobiotics and in all these ancient sciences, it's a very clear understanding that a food not only comes with nutrients, but it also comes with a component of energy which is unseen and which has some effect in terms of how we behave, how we feel, and how we turn up as a personality. So,
Mhm.
and you have been into this, you've been a pioneer for last almost 3 decades into understanding these foods. Where did your actually journey start from into macrobiotics and going further into understanding all the aspects of foods, whether it be, the chemical side or the energetic side, and how did it actually come together, all of it in your practice?
In my 20s, after I graduated from graduate school, um, I moved back to Philadelphia area, and Dr. Anthony Sadalero was president of Methodist Hospital, and
Mhm.
he contracted cancer, and he successfully healed himself with macrobiotics. And I had never heard about macrobiotics before. I was managing a health food store at the time. So I took a cooking class, and I was so amazed about, learning about people who had cancer and heart disease, improving their health. And I just wanted to learn as much as I could about it. So I studied in the Philadelphia area, and then did all the levels at the Kushi Institute, which is the center for studying macrobiotics at the time up in the Berkshire Mountains in Massachusetts. And once I graduated from there, I started teaching. I did a presentation in Japan, and then I taught every summer in Amsterdam at the Kushi Institute there, and in California every summer because I was a guidance counselor. I had summers off so I could travel and teach. And I got to work a lot alongside with Michio Kushi, especially when he came to Philadelphia. I would take all his notes when he saw his clients. And sometimes he'd see, there was weekends where he would put people on the stage every 15 minutes for 6 or 7 days, and I was the only scribe. And so a lot of these healing remedies and dishes I started to learn, and I started to see that they really worked. And at the time, as a guidance counselor in a public school, I started a garden to plate program with the students. And I saw that kids were so open to learning this if they went into the kitchen or if they went into the garden and grew their own food. And that's how my cookbook developed. I was working with kids over about 10-year period. And it was funny, I got a lot of grant money to do this. McDonald's actually gave me grant money.
Oh, wow.
And I won the Golden Carrot Award from Neil Barnard from PCRM for, instructing. I was also instructing area food service directors on how to make healthier dishes with the food that's donated from the government. So over time, I began to see that the diet really works, especially if you're suffering from a chronic illness. And in 2005, I was asked to speak at the Veg Fest in Tokyo, Japan. And following my presentation on macrobiotics, I was hosted at a Shinto shrine in southern Japan. And when I arrived to the shrine, a monk took me around and had me meditate over rice fields. And that was my first introduction to seeing brown rice grow. And I remember seeing like ribbons of light around the field and the beautiful plants in the field. We went down and picked them. And I always remembered that experience. So this year, I met Christian Elwell, who was growing rice in Massachusetts in a colder climate in the US for over 30 years. And Christian was having real success in harvesting the rice on his farm. And I thought, what a great idea to film this whole process, to film the whole 7 stages of growing rice and how to harvest it, particularly because our modern animal-based food system is not working. It's unsustainable in so many ways. We're running out of resource pollution. We know it's contributing to climate change, and it's really harming our health. So we're hoping with this film to really educate people on the fact that you can grow your own food, but not only grow your own vegetables and fruits, but you can also grow your own grain, particularly brown rice.
That's amazing initiative. I mean, I who on earth could have thought that, at home level you can actually grow brown rice, because we don't have those mindsets. So okay, so I think since our topic is brown rice, Sherry, I think I'll talk anything and everything about brown rice. So what has been your experience being a healing cook and chef and teaching people how to cook rice? I mean, this is a generic question, but you can actually very well apply it to brown rice as well.
Yeah, so the base of macrobiotic cooking is whole grain. The reason being because a whole grain has all the vitamins, minerals, fiber that your body needs, and many thousands of civilizations came through the years with support from eating whole grains. So, they are different grains that they ate, oats in Europe and quinoa down in South America, and then you have buckwheat from Russia. So many civilizations centered their meal means grain, around whole grains, not around animal food. So you can live on whole grains. They provide as much protein and minerals and fiber for your body. I host a TV show called Macro Magic, and I've had Colin Campbell on several times, who's one of the greatest nutritionists in the US.
Yeah, I saw that. That was amazing. Yeah.
How, grain has protein in it. We're sort of brainwashed to think that we need animal food for protein, but grain has enough protein in it, especially when you combine it with beans or bean products. And so using that as a base, I've seen so many diseases turn around, start to heal. I help run the cruise with Sandy Buckel. I get all the food donations for the Holistic Holiday at Sea cruise. Thousands of people come on there with heart conditions, and they, like to listen to Caldwell Esselstyn and Dr. Neil Barnard and host Dr. Greger talk about, healing the body and turning their diet around. So it's really, we're on the edge of transitioning right now, simply because our planet cannot feed enough people just through animal food being the base of the diet.
So, Shari, I have a curious question here. Uh, this is one understanding where we are actually saying that whole grains coming together with beans and being a healing kind of an eating pattern, and side by side there is like quite common nutritional theory which is more prevalent, and I guess everybody knows about it, or at least is affected by it in a way that having carbs is one of the major causes for a lot of health conditions, and go low on carbs and this keto diet. And from the food combination perspective, there's also a theory which says that when carbs and proteins come together, it causes digestive issues. So what to believe and what not to believe?
Right. That's a good question. Lots and lots of science comes out to try to prove different theories, but I like to rely totally on what did our ancient ancestors eat and how did they survive? And if you research all the blue zones right now in the
Mhm.
world, they all based their diet on whole grains and plant-based foods. They will have a little bit of animal food, but when they cook the animal food, they know how to balance it correctly. And in macrobiotics, we learn about a lot of how to balance your food. So you might want to cook it with a lot more vegetables and do a small amount. And we were talking the other day in Okinawa, they fry, their animal food, but they do it in a cold sort of setting, cold oil setting where you don't get
Okay.
much fat and kickback from the animal food. And then of course, more people are looking at sustainable eating more um, antibiotic free animal food. But I think you can I've practiced this way of eating for over 40 years now, just having my diet based on grains and vegetables and beans and bean products and fermented foods. And I don't have any health problems that I know of. And I think it's a good, healthy way of eating. It's very it makes you really calm and relaxed and focused, but also um, you don't have the aches and pains. You don't have the inflammation. You don't have, you recover quickly if you have a
Mm.
cold or the flu or whatever. So just from personal experience, and then looking at cultures from around the world. When people would get sick around the world, many, many cultures would create this cereal called congee. And if you look
Mhm.
it up, congee was just cooked down grain. And then they would add whatever herb or vegetable would be healing to that person in the congee. And people who are dying, or babies who are born that don't have mother's milk, in macrobiotics, we learn how to make rice milk for both
Wow,
those types of conditions. And even
that's
if you're
interesting. Yeah.
eating it towards the end of your life, you transition much easier as you pass
Okay.
away.
Nice. So, Shari, I do understand that when it comes to actually whole grains and beans, keeping these as staple foods is one part of the story. But I mean, just correct me if I'm wrong. It's equally important that we have right cooking methods joined with these grains and beans, and then only it becomes healing. How true is that?
Well, I think just getting off the junk, like cleaning out your cabinets and desk drawers and just putting healthier snacks in is a good first step. And then
Mm-hmm.
finding your favorite foods. You might, love what your grandmother used to eat, but then substituting the ingredients with healthier ingredients.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no right or wrong way to cook, but it's very, very helpful. And I've always taken classes in cooking, even when I'm teaching. It's very, very helpful to learn the techniques of cooking because it makes your food so much more delicious. And so many people love eating it when you know how to
Yeah.
cook it correctly. Um, we are going to show that in the movie, how to cook brown rice correctly. It's very simple way. Basically, you need to soak the rice overnight because it is a whole grain and it takes a while to break down. So you rinse it 3 times just to get off the grain, the dirt, and the bugs. And then you soak it in, well, you take 1 cup of rice, whole grain rice, and soak it in 2 cups of water and make sure it's spring water or filtered water. Leave that overnight. just bring it up to a low simmer on the stove with a pinch of sea salt, good quality sea salt. We recommend SI salt, or a small piece of kombu seaweed, and cover it for an hour and bring it down. You might want to put a little flame tamer underneath so it doesn't burn on the bottom, and
Mhm.
let it sit until it cools, because that's still steaming the rice. And then you can use that rice for up to 3 days for anything you
Okay.
want: fried rice, sushi rolls, rice balls, anything you want to carry in your lunchbox. Um, and then you can always combine it. You can combine it with sweet rice, barley, farro, rye, all sorts of different whole grains or cracked grains, bulgur wheat,
Mhm.
or couscous. And if you base your meals, if you just add that once a week to your meals, to what you're going to feel, I guarantee, so much better. Because rice not only has the exact protein, fat, water content, um, amino acids that your body needs, it also has tons of fiber. So if you're suffering from constipation or IBS or Crohn's disease, it's you can just boil rice and make it a little softer with a little bit more water, and it will clean out your digestive system.
Wow. And
So it's a very, really good.
how important is chewing? I mean, I think it's like, first step is choosing the right grains and ingredients. Second step is cooking, and third step is chewing, right?
Absolutely. So chewing is one of the most important steps. And I just wanted to share with you one of our really inspirational macrobiotic teachers who passed away helped
Hmm.
develop this film, Ed Esco.
Okay.
And he wrote a book called Light Foods, and I highly recommend people read it. And he explained how sunlight is captured, as photosynthesis, and combines with carbon dioxide with the air, water, and soil. And then
Hmm.
actual sunlight is captured in the simple carbohydrate known as glucose. And we all know that we need glucose, plenty of glucose for our brain and our pancreas and our blood sugar. So these long chain molecules, these complex carbs that are in the brown rice, only break down if we chew them super well. And as we chew them, we release this stored sunlight. And that's why
Wow.
when you eat brown rice, you feel bright, you feel happy, you feel positive. Misho Kushi, our teacher in macrobiotics, told the story about how people in Japan would eat out of these bento boxes that were sealed up for a couple of years. And all of a sudden, they'd want to stay in their houses. They felt very depressed. Canned foods can do a lot like that if you're not eating any
Hmm.
fresh, but all canned foods, because you pick up the energy of the food. We are what we eat. We Our body is the environment. So if you're taking in a lot of dark, heavy, salty, greasy foods, you're going to feel weighted down. You're going to feel depressed. You're going to feel lethargic.
Can I just add on something here? Like, and the properties that you just mentioned about stale foods and dark foods and the foods that have this tendency of making you get into that low mode or not wanting to move and getting into that couch potato mode. There's a similar understanding in Ayurveda. Foods are categorized in three different forms: rajas, sattva, and tamas, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
sattva is the balancing factor, like yin yang. Yin is like
Mm-hmm.
more on the sweet side, yang is more on the salt side. And
Uh-huh.
similarly, sattva is like the balancing factor. So in between, the balancing factor that macrobiotics talks about, just between yin and yang, is sattva. And
Yes.
rajas is like active factor, foods that actually stimulate you, like sugars that'll just make you go jump and
Mm-hmm.
go high and all of that. So that
Mm-hmm.
that's the concept of rajas. And tamas is what you just mentioned, which is about stale, low energy and dark energy. So there's
Yes.
so much that resonates with the understanding when you start actually applying these concepts, how true it is.
Yeah. And so, just for viewers to understand, macrobiotics looks at the energy of food and the energy of disease. We don't look at the name of the disease or calories or things like that. So when we look at plants and our physical bodies, there's two types of energy. There's real expanding energy, like what you talked about. So that would be sweets and sugar and
Yeah.
drugs and alcohol. And then there's more contracting energy, like salt and meat and eggs and cheese. So it's what we teach people in cooking and in eating macrobiotic food is not to eat so extreme, because then your emotions will be extreme, your moods will be extreme. You'll develop a lot of physical ailments that are extreme, and to move your eating back into the center. And the main food for doing that is brown rice, because brown rice is the most balanced food. And then so you use that as your main dish, and then you add complements to the dish. But beans, grains, sea vegetables, they're all very much more balanced. They're not so extreme as eggs and sugar or meat and alcohol. So what happens is your body always tries to go back to the middle. And if you're eating a lot of salt, then you crave a lot of sugar. And if you eat a lot of eggs, you'll crave a lot of alcohol. And people wonder, well, I can't get off the chocolate. Well, it's not the chocolate that's causing the problem. Look at what's contracting you to crave the chocolate. So you look at the
That's an interesting
opposite.
perspective. That's a step before you actually look into what's causing the problem. Quite interesting. Yeah. So, Sheri, since we're talking about brown rice, I think I'll go sequentially. I would just first want to understand nutritionally why is nutritionally and energetically, why is brown rice so powerful?
Well, the thing that really astounded me doing this film and meeting Kristen Elwell and being on his farm was that we don't have a relationship with our plants anymore. We're factory farm, large farms are dropping seeds by airplane, they're harvesting by combine.
Yeah.
There's no human touch to food, and that's why we want to push, personal gardening so much in this film. The amazing thing about rice is when you plant it, it yields so much more rice. I mean, we could feed the whole world and not have starving children around the world. One seed, for example, when it's planted, produces 650 seeds in one season. The next harvest, if you plant those same seeds, you get 24 pounds of rice. And the third, you get 7 tons of rice. So that's why we subtitled our film, One Grain, 10,000 Grains. Not that just one grain produces 10,000 grains, but the whole theory behind the ecosystem just supporting us. Whereas the opposite is if we have a hamburger or 1 pound of beef. So if we eat 1 pound of beef, 10,000 gallons of water go into producing that beef. Thousands of dollars of fertilizer, pesticides, chemicals, antibiotics goes into the animal. So it's the total opposite. It's 10,000 to 1 as opposed to 1 to 10,000.
And it has a compounding effect, I believe. It has a compounding effect, right?
Yeah,
starts with 1, but it just keeps multiplying.
Yes, and it's affecting, all they say these factory farms too are affecting our climate as well. So both in terms of resources, pollution, climate change, human health, we've got to go back, if we're going to continue generation after generation to survive on this earth, we've got to start making smarter economic and health decisions and eat more plant-based food and grow it ourselves. So that's the whole emphasis behind our film. But you mentioned about people, not only connecting with rice. Brown rice, when you grow and cultivate it, you'll see that it goes through these 7 stages of growth. Like breaking dormancy is the first stage, then the seedling stage where you plant it in little dirt containers, and then you'll put it out in the paddy or in dry land. So you have a choice of doing that. And then the reproductive phase is when the flowers come, and the ripening phase is when the flowers gather into a panicle. And then, like we said, the sunlight, actually, there's a liquid that forms in the plant that hardens. We always call that liquid sunshine. And then the harvesting and setting the seeds aside for the next season. So when you see the whole process, and we encourage kids even to grow rice in a bucket just to see this whole process, you start to relate to your plants. You start to form an affinity to your plant. And many civilizations did this throughout the world in various cultures, especially the American Indians. They would have celebrations at planting time and harvest time. And we've come so far away from our food now, spiritually. And that's one of the points that I want to make in terms of, growing your own food and eating your own food. You're going to feel a lot different. But also the nutrition of the food. Like I said, many civilizations have eaten grain as their main dish for many, many thousands of years, and have survived health-wise, and I think actually have lived a long age due to that, a more plant-based diet. So the fact that we have the capacity to feed so many thousands more people in the whole world by growing plant-based foods, especially growing rice, and also getting away from factory farms, and the fact that it's so nutritious for the body, both with
So,
B vitamins and fiber and phytonutrients.
So, Sheri, the kind of nutrients that you're talking about, which are there in brown rice, uh, does the nutrient density in polished rice go low? I mean, if
Yes.
we have
So
to actually differentiate between the two.
the more you polish it, it's just like bread, white bread versus whole wheat bread. The more you polish the rice, the more you take out that outer bran. And if you go to our website, macromagic.com, you'll see that we're selling soap made from the bran.
Mhm.
Rice bran is used throughout the Orient, specifically in Japan, to wash your skin. It tones your skin really nicely.
Yeah,
But that bran gives you fiber. And once you lose that fiber, then constipation happens, diabetes happens, it jacks up your blood sugar because it's a simple food that dissolves in your mouth and not in your digestive tract. So when you drink alcohol, it goes right to your brain because it
yeah,
dissolves in your mouth.
the
Same
blood.
thing with white rice, white bread, white crackers. They dissolve. So people love them because it jacks up your sugar level so well, but it jacks it up and then it pulls it right down. So then you'll have like sugar craving, like a deep sugar blues where you have to go to happy hour and bring it back up.
Yeah. So that brings me to my next question. Uh, it's the taste factor that actually makes people stick to taste factor and the craving factor, like the blood sugar factor, which makes people
Mhm.
stick to these simple grains, right? A simple form of grains. What can be the right cooking strategy so that people can actually start to enjoy these whole grains and specifically brown rice?
So you'll know what you brought up was very important. Chewing it makes it sweeter. The more you chew it, the sweeter it is.
Mhm.
So learning creative ways of using rice, just like you would use white rice. So fried rice, where you cook a lot of vegetables and then you add the rice at the end with some seasoning like mirin and shoyu and brown rice vinegar and ginger or garlic, is a great way. You can cook rice in soups. You can make rice in desserts. You can ferment rice with koji and make amasaki like a drink.
Mhm.
Um, Japanese, the old Japanese culture really used rice in many, many different ways throughout their cooking because they knew how balanced a food it was. So just by changing the cooking style or the seasoning, you can make a million different dishes. There's so many cookbooks on all the different types of rice and all the different kinds of dishes you can
Yeah.
create from brown rice.
And is it okay to have brown rice milk also? I think that that's also one of the dish that's happening all across the world. But I don't know if it's made with a cooked rice or raw
Yeah,
rice. You just soak it and then you make it.
commercially, if you buy rice milk, you're not getting the good quality brown rice milk that we can make homemade. So
Mhm.
a real simple recipe is just take 1 cup of brown rice, make sure you wash it, soak it overnight, and cook it with 10 cups of water and a pinch of salt. I just made it for my sister the other
Okay.
day. And when you're not feeling well, you can just drink that as a broth. You could put a little bit of umeboshi plum in there, which is very
Mhm.
medicinal for the body. And I guarantee if you have a cold or the flu or a fever or whatever, it brings the body into balance and helps you heal quicker.
Wow, that and it's a very simple recipe, I believe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm, great. S- Yeah. So, Shari, like if we talk about brown rice, there are so many varieties of rice available. It's red rice, black rice, and even in brown rice, there's so many varieties. I mean, how does one go and choose about I use this or this one, and does it actually make an impact to health also, the kind of rice that you choose, and you keep eating it over time? Yeah, I mean, that's a personal question also. I mean, if in my pantry I have 5 6 different kinds of brown rice, long grain, medium grain, short grain, and though
Mm-hmm.
I keep doing that mix match thing, but then how can you from the health perspective you can actually be foolproof that okay, for maybe this season this one, or this season this one, or this combination is going to heal this kind of a condition? So how does one actually get into that kind of an understanding?
Well, the interesting thing is, I study American Indian cooking,
Okay.
the American Indians, how they cook, and
Mm-hmm.
they had the five colored rice according to the five transformations, which is another form of
Okay.
looking at energy. So it's interesting that you asked that question. So just short grain, whole brown rice is probably the center of macrobiotics, and we go back to that a lot. But it doesn't mean that in the summertime you can't enjoy more long grain rice or medium grain rice in the spring and fall. So, and then you can mix it with black and red and all the different types of rices. The black rice that's grown in Minnesota by the American Indians still is a wild grass. That's not a brown rice, but that's nice
Okay.
too to add. So as our base, we usually use short grain brown rice. Again, it's not the fact that one rice can heal a certain condition more than the other. It's the style of cooking. So if you have heart disease, or it's the things that you add to rice. So if you have heart disease, you could cook your rice with corn. Corn is very healing to the heart.
Mm-hmm.
If you have spleen pancreas problems, you can add like something sweet to the rice, like chestnuts, and that helps the spleen and blood sugar problems. Um, Make sure that your brown rice is not irradiated, that it's grown organically. The thing we learned about rice with this documentary was the arsenic. We did have Christian's farm tested for arsenic. There was no arsenic found in his rice,
Wow.
as well as at Blue Moon Acres, where we also filmed in New Jersey. Jim Lyons is growing rice there. So commercial rice, there is some arsenic. I don't think it's at the dangerous level if you get organic. But if you get more commercial, oftentimes the fertilizer, the chicken manure fertilizer, and the fact that they're spraying cotton so close to the organic, the southern rice farms, you have to make sure that you're not getting a lot of arsenic. And then also you want to make sure that wherever you're growing your rice, it's grown in really good soil. We learned a lot about soil in this documentary, that if you take a cupful or an ounce, they say, of good quality soil, there are more microorganisms in it than every mother, child, or male,
Mm-hmm.
female on this planet.
Oh, wow.
And the microorganisms go into our body and heal our microbiome, which is so important, our gut bacteria. Oftentimes we destroy our gut bacteria through the use of antibiotics and various drugs and alcohol and pesticides. The GMOs are really affecting our microbiome, but that microbiome is what is keeping our immune system strong through this whole pandemic. So it's really important to keep that microbiome healthy by eating fermented foods such as pickles and sauerkraut and miso, and a lot of the fermented foods in the macrobiotic diet. So you need
In
the
South India, we have this specific recipe made with rice. It's not made with brown rice; it's with the white rice itself. But it's a staple recipe in South India where they actually take that mud pot, and then they add that cooked rice to that. They add water to it, and then they keep it overnight, like water, rice soaked under the water, and they consume it in the morning. They use it in multiple ways, consuming just the water, or just grinding it and adding some spices
Mm.
and some onion and chilies to it, and then making some recipes out of it.
Yeah,
So it's quite a staple in
traditionally,
South India.
yeah, traditionally it's wonderful that you guys eat so clean and so much of a plant-based diet. And you have to remember, in hot weather, you don't want to eat a ton of short grain brown rice, because long grain will cool your body off more and be more conducive. But try to include whole grain brown rice instead of white rice as much as you
Hmm.
can, and you'll feel a difference. The other thing I wanted to mention was that if the rice is grown in an organic environment with good soil, good air, clean water, um, it's very, very different than the commercial rice that's sprayed. And the
Hmm.
more we spray, the more depleted our soil becomes, and the more it becomes like dirt. And that's where we're running into problems right now,
Yeah.
because all this commercial farming and the GMOs are affecting our gut. So people are having celiac disease, they're having gluten problems and things like that, because their gut bacteria is so weak. And those microorganisms are not, strong enough to have them heal. So
So probiotics is the key, is where we are going, right?
what's that?
Probiotics is the key.
Yeah, so I was going to mention probiotics and prebiotics. So probiotics are all the fermented foods, the misos, the sauerkraut, the sourdough bread, and um, that's probiotics. And prebiotics are the whole grain. So these fermented foods have to feed off of whole grain. So when you eat them together, like brown rice with kimchi, or sauerkraut and sourdough bread, then
Mhm.
that combination builds a super strong
Okay,
microbiome.
nice. That's
Mhm.
interesting. Yeah. So, okay, Shari, I'll just would want to go into the traditional understanding of the association of foods with different organ systems in the body. Now, this is a concept of TCM, which is also part of macrobiotics, I guess. But every specific food has some affinity, some association with specific organ systems. Where does brown rice relate to in the body?
So we study yin and yang in macrobiotics, which
Mhm.
is contracting and expanding, but then we separate it into how that energy transform into 5
Yeah,
stages. American
yeah.
Indians base this on, and Ayurvedic bases this on. So
Hmm.
we have the fire stage, which is related to the heart and small intestine. And then we have the soil stage, which is the pancreas, spleen, and stomach. We have the metal stage, which is the large intestines and the lungs. We have the water stage, which is the kidney, bladder. And we have the tree stage, which is the liver, gallbladder. So this 5 transformations relates to the seasons of the year, the times of the day, how your meridians move through your body at night, and also through all the foods. So the brown rice is really related to the lung and large intestine. So specifically, I mentioned that it helps your large intestine clean out with all the fiber, but it also,
Hmm.
since your lung in Chinese medicine is related to your large intestine, once you clean out the large intestine, the lungs get better. So if you have
Yeah,
lung
because they have the
cancer,
affinity together, right? Lungs and large intestine have
yeah,
some affinity
their
together.
meridian runs together. So you ask any acupuncturist, he'll show you all the points on the body that are related to lung and large intestine.
Mhm.
But that goes backwards. If you eat too much rice, you might get tightness in your chest and also tightness in your intestinal tract. So you have
That
to
was actually
find a
my next
personal
question.
balance.
That was my next question. Can somebody survive and live on brown rice? I mean, most of the times.
So George Asawa, who brought macrobiotics basically to the world, and then Michio Kushi modified his teachings, was a very extreme teacher. And if you pick up any of his books, you'll
Hmm.
read about how he used to put people on a brown rice diet for 7
Yeah,
days and chew it
7 day
really
diet. Yeah.
well. Yeah.
Hmm.
And we don't recommend that anymore, simply because our ancestors or our mothers and fathers ate too much animal food, and
Hmm.
it can just tighten us up too much, and shut down the body a little bit. So we recommend more of a lighter or moderate way of introducing brown rice into the diet, meaning that you should have it maybe once a day on your plate, but maybe mix it with another grain, or have it in another form, or ferment it, things like that. So not so severe. What I wanted to mention too, which I forgot to mention, is at the farm we grow a really special kind of rice called Dvorkian rice. It's from Russia, and it has a long hairline antenna on top. And this hairline antenna is actually, during the nighttime, collecting energy from the cosmos. And Michio Kushi used to explain that on rice was very, very powerful in stimulating our own intuition, our third eye, opening our third eye, things like that.
It's the cosmic signal, I guess. That's how they look at it. It's the cosmic signal where the cosmic energy gets into that small grain, and then you consume it, and you become a blueprint of what you consume.
Yes, and the problem though is with farming, they've hibernated the rice to remove these awns, so you don't get them on your regular brown rice anymore because they get clogged in the harvesting machines. But you can grow it, get the seeds. It's called Dvorkian seeds, and grow them at home yourself.
Okay.
The trick is, if you grow your own rice, you've got to figure out how to thresh it and how to hull it. And there are, in the film, you'll see us use an old-time threshing machine. A lot of people, just put on gloves and sort of rolled it between their hands, or put it in blue jeans and stomped on it on the ground. And then hulling it, there are hulling machines that you can buy, small hulling machines. And freshly hulled rice is very, very strong and powerful and healing for the body.
So, Sheri, since you were talking of this, and there was another question that was just coming on in my mind. In the raw food, so there's a raw food revolution going on. There's a specific segment of people who are quite onto raw food, and in the raw food way of life, brown rice is consumed in its sprouted form. Yeah. So what actually is sprouted rice? I mean, I don't think that, sprouting rice is possible. Does that mean soaked up rice? Is that called a sprouted rice, or it's actually the sprouts that come up? What is this theory all about?
Eventually. So just so you're aware, cooking your food brings heat into your body. So we know in the summertime, we don't eat as much cooked food as in the wintertime. If we're living in a super hot climate, raw food cools our body off. But it also doesn't give us much energy. So if you continue on raw food diet for long, long periods of time, oftentimes you lose energy. But if you've had a lot of meat and animal food in your past, sometimes raw food makes balance with that, and you don't feel so weak. So animal food and living in a hot climate, you might be more attracted to do more raw foods. Nothing wrong with that. Sprouted rice is just sprouted brown rice. It's left in water for a long period of time. And chewing it and breaking it down, it's going to be a little bit harder to digest compared to the cooked rice, and it won't give you a ton of energy like the cooked rice does, because cooking is pre-digesting your food. And we all know we have chewing problems. I mean, if you sit there and try to chew your food 100 times, it's hard. You swallow it and it doesn't get chewed 100 times. So the fact that you're not cooking it and you're eating it raw all the time, it makes it even harder to digest. But that's not to say, do what you feel your body needs. If you need raw food for a long period of time, you might need it to balance out your old condition or the climate.
I guess it's person to person. Like if we look into Ayurveda, it's about, as a person, what you're carrying within, and according to that, you apply your foods rather than just blindly following a protocol which says, okay, day by day, follow this, right?
Yeah, I always teach that in my cooking classes. Use your intuition. So I give you a recipe, but modify it according to the salts. You might want more salt, or you might want less salt, or you might want more sweet or less sweet, or you might want to add some other ingredient to it. There's no right or wrong. It's more listening to our own intuition, because our intuition is the most balanced. And we teach you yin and yang, but they're just props. to guide you back to using your own intuition.
Great. So, nutritionally, we also have red rice and we have black rice, we have brown rice. So, nutritionally, is there any difference between brown rice, red rice, black rice, and what, like, from the daily consumption perspective, can we say that we be on brown rice, or we keep shuffling between brown, red, and black? And, how do we go about it in terms of, like, nutritionally, as well as the impact they have on our body in the maybe a contractive energy, or the expanded energy? So, how to kind of
Yeah,
create
I
that
mean,
balance.
you bring up a good point. I haven't really studied it that deeply that I know the difference. So I think, like I said, be careful. Some black rice is wild grass. It's not real rice, but experiment. Like there's thousands of different varieties of rice, and it's great as long as it's grown in a clean, organic way. Experiment and see how it feels, in your body. Black, the color black, like black foods, really help the kidneys. So
Kidney.
black beans and black rice, they really help the kidneys. Red is more, fire energy, so that helps the heart a little bit more. Like I said, regular short grain brown rice is more the lung and large intestine. So
Mhm.
yeah, definitely play around, try different varieties, see how you feel. Um, It'd be interesting to do an analysis, a deep analysis, and look at the
Mhm.
nutrients of each. But they're
Okay.
probably very similar.
I feel so. I mean, no, you've brought in a good point. Like, if we go by the colors, and how these colors resonate with different organ systems, that's one way of looking at it traditionally, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Nice. So, okay. So, Sherry, one of the problems that a lot of people actually talk about when it comes to brown rice, and that's also one of the reasons a lot of people would not want to actually gravitate towards eating a lot of brown rice, is its arsenic content. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
uh, I mean, so I have a few questions on arsenic. One, is how much true is this controversy that brown rice, we know, has arsenic, but when, like, consuming it on a regular basis, can it harm us? That's one. And secondly, are there any specific cooking styles that one can follow to make sure that even if it has some traces of arsenic, can be neutralized by the cooking styles?
Well, the astounding thing that we learned when we filmed the movie, we went to University of Delaware and interviewed Dr. Seifert, and she really shared with us that any rice has arsenic because, and especially rice grown in a paddy, it increases the
Mhm.
arsenic. So there's traces of arsenic, but apparently, like we've been eating it for billions and billions of years, even seaweed has arsenic in it. So I think it's in small amounts and it's not as harmful as we think to our body. But again, you've got to be careful about commercial foods because if it's sprayed, like I said, close to a cotton field, or chicken manure is used, or commercial fertilizers and pesticides really bring up the amount of arsenic. There's no specific way to get rid of the arsenic. It's good to wash your rice definitely and soak it. I mean, some people have said, put like a piece of, some bleach in there and things. I just think that's too off balanced.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
so just wash your rice really well. Make sure it's from an organic farm, maybe a local farm if you can find one. And I wouldn't worry about it too much.
Okay, so I mean, that's safe. I mean, as long as you're taking all these precautions, you can be very well on brown rice, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay. Okay. So, from the effect perspective, like, if we say that somebody who has been a long time consumer of refined foods, or simple sugars, or simple, whole grains in its simple forms, decides to move on to living a life which is centered around whole grains and brown rice. I mean, this is one of a typical example that also actually applies to me when when I studied macrobiotics and brought in all those shifts, moving from simple to complex forms. But in my own journey, I realized that it not only helped me physically, but it stabilized my mind. I mean,
Mhm.
it stabilized my anxiety, it stabilized my aggression. So there was a lot of balancing effect that I experienced, but that did not happen in a day. It's like, continuously when I consumed it for a certain few months, and then I was practicing macrobiotics, and it was, kind of a holistic approach that I was taking, and I was also doing yoga. So all of these things when came together. So plus, but I think foods did had a very strong impact, because I saw a lot of things changing in my body very quickly when I changed my foods. So what do you think when it comes to brown rice? I personally experienced that it's not only the body that it affects, it also affects your mind. But what's your take on that?
Okay, so in Chinese medicine, we know that the intestines are related to the brain. There's a direct correlation. And so as we heal the
So is it
intestines,
the gut brain axis that we're talking about
mhm, mhm,
in the modern world? That's how we look at it, right?
yes. And so when Michio Kushi used to teach, macrobiotics, he would always talk about one peaceful world. His mission when he came to the United States was to discover what really creates peace in people's minds. And he went to Upton Sinclair. He interviewed Norman Cousins. He studied, at the university, and he was trying to figure out what really brings peace to the world. And he discovered, one person at a time, eating
Mhm.
really clean food, specifically brown rice, because brown rice does create that peaceful mind. At the end of the film, we're going to end with the Japanese symbol for peace, and it's actually a rice plant in a bucket, so or a mouth. And so it symbolizes, and they've had shrines developed in Japan, symbolizes that eating brown rice creates a very peaceful, like you said, you had experienced
Mhm.
less anxiety, simply because it's that complex carb that turns into such good quality glucose, and our brain lives off glucose. So if I put a wooden log in the fire, it burns very slowly. If I put paper, like sugar, in my body, it burns very fast. So brown rice is like putting that log in the fire where your blood sugar stays even all the time and you don't get the spikes.
Mhm.
A
And I
lot
guess
of
that's the
spice and
beginning
a
of
lot
a
of
lot
sugar.
of lifestyle disorders. Once your blood sugar starts to go that spiky way, then you can expect all kind of health conditions in future.
Most people walking around today have hypoglycemia, and you can see on the bridge of your nose if there's like a dark spot over the bridge of your nose, because this is your pancreas, spleen, stomach area.
Hmm.
And if you get that darkness, that means your pancreas is very tight from old eating style of meat and eggs and baked flour. And to have more circulation there is necessary. So what happens is your blood sugar level drops significantly, and that can create crime if it's extreme. It can create
Hmm.
all sorts of eating disorders. It can create depression, anxiety, and then healing that, by chewing and eating good quality brown rice and vegetables and beans and bean products, you start to have more circulation and your blood sugar starts to even out. And that's why you're having the peaceful mind, peaceful emotions, peace throughout the day.
I guess, this is one of the most interesting things that I learned out of my, macrobiotic learnings, that how foods have that power to actually change your thoughts, and which is what I keep telling to my clients as well. But and it's a dedicated path. It's not that it's a 3 month program or a 5 months program you complete it and then you go back to old ways and then you say, okay, it's not working. It's You really have to adopt this way of life, and then you see how gradually body changes,
Mm-hmm.
mind changes, and you change as a person. So I don't know why is it not being talked that how eating can actually change your personality completely. We're talking of all other stuff, but we're not talking about how eating can do that.
Exactly. And when I first learned this, I thought, wow, wait till I tell everybody at school, or wait till I tell all the doctors, or wait till I tell everybody in my family. And it was really difficult because
Yeah.
people didn't
The
grasp
idea
it.
doesn't get absorbed really well. Yes, I mean, I guess that's a similar mindset that's quite prevalent in India also. I mean, because macrobiotics, it's not very common in India. I guess there are a few practitioners working on it, and since it's not a known modality, and plus the understanding is different, and in the Indian context, we are more used to the modern concepts like bodybuilding, so I need protein, blood sugar level, so I need to go off carbs completely, or maybe some other health concern and I need to go on this fat. So actually breaking those stereotype kind of mentality is, I think it takes a lot of effort and hard work, and that's the reason I'm just trying to bring about, experts like you really want to talk about. It's a very different understanding. It's not at the superficial level. So what we know today, it's very superficial. It's just at the surface. For some time, maybe you'll be able to manage your weight, going on to protein, you'll build your body and you'll bring down your blood sugar levels, but it's not sustainable. What is sustainable is actually understanding your
Yeah.
energy and the energy of foods.
I think people have suffered enough. I think in the world, there's so many people walking around taking lots of medicines which have side effects. And if they could learn just simply adding some good quality foods like brown rice to their diet, they'll feel the difference automatically, and then that will change. Because I think, we all grew up with tons of social media marketing thrown at us about, just eat these foods because these companies want to make profit. They don't really
Yeah,
care about our
exactly.
health. And if we don't take, personal responsibility for our own health, and just follow along with what social media is telling us to do, we wind up in trouble. Because every medicine has a side effect. Because the
Yeah.
medicines are just looking at the symptoms, they're not looking at the cause. And if you try to dig deeper and sort of find energetically what's going on with your body, you'll understand and feel so much better.
Exactly. So, Sherry, we are moving towards ending the session, but I'm again a curious question. We would really love to know, how do you consume your brown rice? In what forms?
Oh, so I just made a pot this morning. I use a donabi pot, so it's got two lids. It's like a clay pot. But you can
Mhm.
put it in a pressure cooker. You can put it just in a saucepan. We don't recommend pressure cooking as much anymore because it's again
Fun.
too high
Contracted.
energy. So I just, I'll cook it and then I'll put it on a plate with some salad and some beans and some sweet potato or whatever vegetable I want that day. And it's
Mhm.
delicious. I have it once a day and then I'll store the rest for the next 2 days and just heat it up, steam it up and eat it. Or sometimes I'll fry some vegetables and put it on top. We had a good friend of mine, Patricio DeParates, from Japan from the Macrobiotic school in Japan, and he made this beautiful risotto, brown rice
Mhm.
risotto, on my TV show last week, which I posted the recipe on my website,
I'll definitely go and check
macromagic.com.
that out. I
Yeah.
really struggle with the recipes. I mean, I have some few staple ones. I stick to them, but when it comes to experimentation, I'm thinking next what?
Yeah, so it's just more getting familiar with your cooking. And like I said, if you can take some cooking classes, I offer cooking classes online. They're very
Mhm.
inexpensive. You can join for the month and you get a cooking class and a lecture.
I'll
And
look into that.
just,
Yeah.
and we also stream in videos of me cooking
Mhm.
with little recipes throughout the month. So you can just check it out, sign in and look online when you're ready to cook in your kitchen. And the cookbook's really helpful because it's got a lot of photos in it. Just continually get support for your cooking and you'll feel like you're really mastering. It's like an
Yeah.
art. It's like painting.
Exactly. And I think
Yeah.
it's a knack. I mean, the people who are actually really good cooks, one part is learning, the other part is that there is some knack behind it. You're meant for this.
Yeah. Some people are comfortable in the kitchen. Some people don't like to cook at all. But I always say just start with oatmeal. Half cup of
Yeah.
oatmeal, 2 cups of water, soak it, turn it on, bring it to boil, then cover it and shut it off with a pinch of salt. It's a good breakfast. But
Mm.
an
So
oatmeal has so many.
what kind of oatmeal would you recommend? It's the steel cut form,
So
or
yeah,
the
so whole
rolled
oats
form?
take like almost all night to cook, and we don't recommend those too much anymore because there's so much heat in the body. So
Mhm.
cracked oats
Mhm.
or rolled oats. Make sure they're
Okay.
organic, not sprayed.
Okay.
Um, but again, a lot of heart patients are coming to me now and they're saying,
Mhm.
my doctor recommended I start eating oatmeal because it's so good, balancing point.
Mhm.
It's also good to balance out the humidity. If you go to a very humid climate, it helps
Mhm.
cool your body off. So it's
Yeah.
got vitamins, it's got,
Summer food, it's good summer food.
hmm yeah,
No, no, I'm
so,
asking, is it a good summer food?
hmm So there's lots of grains that you'll learn, but just remember whole grains have more fiber and they're the most healing. And then the cracked grains are missing some parts, so they're a little less healing. And then the flakes,
Mhm.
and the flour is totally almost depleted. So if you want to recover from a serious illness, start with whole grains and specifically, like we said, brown rice.
Great. Thank you so much, Sherry. It was really deep insights into actually knowing much about brown rice. But before we end up the session, tell us something more about your upcoming documentary and what is the message behind this documentary that you want to pass on?
Okay, so our message is that simply avoiding animal foods and learning how to connect with your plants um, by gardening. As we move into the new millennium, we've got to do this for our the survival of the earth and the survival of our health. So it's really important to learn how to garden and learn how to cook. I can't, express that enough.
Mhm.
And, I did want to thank Eden Foods who supported the film, as well as, we've got many contributors online. We're on GoFundMe if you like the idea of the film. We want to educate children, so we want to include a children's book with the film, a coffee table book with the film, and we want the project to continue after the film is made. So the documentary is 45 minutes long. We're in the middle of editing it right now. We filmed the whole 7 stages of rice throughout last year. We also interviewed Neil Barnard from the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine and Colin Campbell from Cornell on the nutritional value of rice, as well as a host of professors at Cornell that talked about growing rice around the world. And like I said, University of Delaware professor talking about arsenic. So we show the different varieties of rice. We show how rice is grown. We show how rice is cooked. The end of the film, we show how people make products from the rice, like the rice soap
Mhm.
that I sell on my website.
Wow.
And so the timeline is the film is towards completion this summer. We hope to enter it in a bunch of film festivals before showing it to the public. We do hope to put it on the Sandy Perkel's cruise. We hope to showcase it there. We hope to showcase it at the Macrobiotic Summer Conference online in July. If we get it through the film festivals by then. And we hope to use it as an educational tool. And our next project is called The Spirit of Corn. So we'll be
Oh,
studying the
wow.
very aspects
Interesting.
of how, the indigenous seeds of corn are still used around the world and how the American Indians use them to heal different conditions.
Great. So I wish you all the best for the movie, and please let me know if I can spread out the word any which ways in India. I think it's
Thank
going to
you.
be a great awareness about this thing. And thank you so much, Sherry. I think we are done with the session. Anything that in the end you would want to end up the session with, and then
I just
wind up the
hope
session.
people from around the world start to look out of the box, especially after I said that so many people are suffering from health conditions. And these are just simple, easy techniques that you can learn to do just by adding a few foods that you might be unfamiliar with to your diet, and seeing how you feel. And, like you said, you went through so many stages of
Yes.
reading and exploring, and you've really found that it's really been helpful for you and your health.
Yeah.
And I hope a lot of people out there watching will do the same.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I, on the ending note, I would just want to add on that specifically, why did I ask this body mind question? Because it has been my own personal journey. Before I got into macrobiotics, the kind of health conditions that I had, serious gastric issues and serious
Mm.
anxiety issues. And I was working with two different doctors, one who was looking at my gut, the other one who was looking at my, the therapy sessions. And for about 10-15 years, I suffered so much that nobody ever
Mm.
could tell me. Somebody told me that, get your ultrasound done. I got my ultrasound done, and this doctor sitting there just tells me, okay, there's nothing, we can see some, gas bubble there, that's it. And I was like, okay, I mean, how can, and so they said we cannot find anything inside, it's all okay. So if there was nothing inside, still it was such a pain. I mean, gastric
Mm.
up and down, and then emotional ups and downs, until I got into macrobiotics, and I practiced for 1 year, which was a part of my program. And by the end of 1 year, to my surprise, as my gastric issues were all sorted, my anxieties were all gone. And that's where, for the first time, I realized this. So when they say gut brain axis, what does that mean? And how does it soothe down your brain immediately as your gut soothes down? And it was
Yeah.
majorly to do with the kind of foods that I was consuming.
Yeah, and we have so many stories in macrobiotics. Usually on the cruise, we have what's called a recovery panel. So
Hmm.
people, it's, with severe illnesses talk about how they've turned things around. So I can't emphasize enough, just getting off the junk, step one, makes a huge amount of difference in your health. But then adding foods with more fiber and B vitamins improves it even more.
Yeah.
And so, step by step, you can get better. There's hope.
Yeah, thank you so much on that note, Sherry. Thank you so much for being here. It's been an honor, talking to you and knowing more about all of this.
Yeah,
And I
thank
seriously
you.
look forward to being in touch with you and, maybe
Great. You can come
interviewing
be a
you in the
guest on
future
my
as well.
TV show.
I would love to do that. I'll do
Share
that
your
soon. Yeah.
story.
Thank you. Thank you, Sherry. I'll do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And make
Bye.
sure to check out my website. It's macromagic.com. So we'll be posting recipes and TV episodes and, the progress of the film on there.
Great. And I would, in the end, I would also, request viewers to watch out your sessions, your TV sessions. I mean, I was watching
Mm.
some of the sessions, and the information is just phenomenal. It's like cutting edge information coming onto one platform from the world's best people in the nutrition world. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Bye bye, Sherry.
Bye.